You have heard this truth 1,000 times, and you have misunderstood it 1,000 times. You believe it is about barter, a transaction with God. You give something of yours, and somewhere a heavenly ledger is marked, obliging the universe to pay you back. This is not truth. This is the commerce of a fearful mind. I am here to tell you that you have never approached the altar of this principle. You have stood outside, calculating. What you call giving is but loss aversion dressed in spiritual costume. You cling to the it, the money, the thing, the deed. And so you have never given at all. You have only invested. Prepare to have the very foundation of this idea overturned within you. We are going behind the word, behind the act, into the very nature of reality itself. What you will discover here will separate the letter that kills from the spirit that gives life. And you will never be able to think of your relationship to the world in the same way again. Now, consider this. All your previous calculations, the careful measure of what you might part with against what you might hope to receive, rests on a fundamental, and I must say, a nearly universal, misconception. You have been operating under the belief that you are here and the substance you possess, be it money, time, love, energy, is over there as a separate commodity you own and can choose to distribute. From this standpoint, giving is an event of loss, however temporary, which you hope a separate God or a separate universe will notice and reimburse. This is the barter of the marketplace, transplanted onto the altar. It is not the sacred activity we are to engage with. What I am leading you to is a radical shift in perspective from the outer court of effects into the holy of holies of cause. The principle we are examining is not transactional. It is consciousness itself in action. The world you see and experience is not a hard, fixed reality operating on its own mechanical laws of scarcity and exchange. It is an outpicturing, a visible form of your own state of awareness. Your consciousness is the mold into which the formless substance of life flows and takes shape. Therefore, your primary activity, your only true activity, is not upon the effect, the it, that shall be given, but upon the cause, which is the quality and nature of your own consciousness. When you hold a belief in lack, in limitation, in a world of separate competing entities, your consciousness is a closed fist. It is a contracted state, a state of fear. From this consciousness, any act of giving is a violent tearing away, a sacrifice that reinforces the very sense of lack from which it was born. You give $1 while fearing its loss, and your consciousness, being the mold, continues to shape a world where loss is not only possible but inevitable. You are, in that very act, decreeing scarcity. The outer form must and will obey the inner mold. You are giving from a sense of my limited supply. And so you are actively maintaining the experience of a limited supply. The transformation occurs when you stop looking at the object, the dollar, the hour, the kindness, and turn your gaze completely inward to the nature of your awareness in the moment of giving. The command to give is not first and foremost an instruction for your hands or your wallet. It is an imperative for your consciousness. You are to give up the cramped, fearful, withholding state of mind. You are to release the belief that you are a solitary entity navigating a world of scarce resources. In its place, you are to assume, to know, to feel the truth of your being as an open channel for an infinite, impartial, and omnipresent substance. This substance is not yours. It is the very life of the universe, and it is what you are made of. So, you do not give of your supply. You give as the activity of supply. When a cup is placed under a flowing fountain, does the cup give water? No. The fountain gives, and the cup is merely the point of transmission. Your hands, your resources, your abilities are that cup. The fountain is the infinite divine consciousness expressing as your individual awareness. True giving, then, is the conscious alignment with that fountain. It is the decision to stop being a stagnant pond hoarding its water and to become a clear, open channel for a ceaseless flow. Take a practical instance. You feel pressed for time, burdened by a dozen demands, and a colleague asks for 5 minutes of your attention. From the old standpoint, you might reluctantly give it, watching the clock, your mind already on the next task, feeling your precious time being drained. This is not giving, it is resentful lending. But from the standpoint of consciousness, you pause. You recognize that time, as you perceive it, is a construct of a rushed and burdened mind. You consciously relax that contraction. You inwardly declare, I am the transparency for infinite life and orderly unfoldment. Then you turn to your colleague, present and open. In that moment, you have given the constricted consciousness. You have imparted peace, attention, and presence. And what is the immediate fruit? The frantic pressure of your own schedule often seems to dissolve. New clarity emerges. Solutions present themselves. Time as an experience expands. You did not get 5 minutes back. You stepped out of the kingdom of minutes and scarcity altogether, and into the kingdom of harmonious unfoldment. It that is given to you is not the 5 minutes returned with interest. It is the increased capacity to live from that harmonious state. The mold of your consciousness, having been opened, now shapes a world where order, sufficiency, and right timing become more apparent. The dollar you release without a backward glance from this state of open-handed consciousness is not a loss you will recover. It is a declaration of your faith in the circulatory nature of infinite substance. And the world shaped by that consciousness will reveal to you the endless avenues of that circulation in forms you could not have calculated, a sudden opportunity, an unexpected provision, a deepening of trust that is worth more than any quantity of currency. You are not paying for a future reward. You are, in the very act, altering the fundamental ground of your being from which all your future experiences spring. The giving and the receiving are one activity, seen from two different points. They are simultaneous movements of the same infinite flow. You are not a trader in the bazaar of life. You are the place where life itself circulates. This leads us directly into the heart of the matter. For if giving is not the transfer of a finite commodity from your private storehouse, then what is it? You see, the moment you perceive yourself as the source of what you give, you are already trapped in the arithmetic of depletion. You look into your account, your reservoir of energy, your well of goodwill, and you measure what remains after you pour some out. This measurement is the signature of fear, and it taints the act at its very root. It turns what should be a holy impartation into a secular transaction of loss. You are left waiting, watching the horizon for the return shipment to make you whole again. This is the torment of the one who believes they are the originator. True giving is not this. True giving is the conscious activity of being a transparency. It is the recognition that you are not the well, but the wellspring. You are not the generator of love or wisdom or supply. You are the place where the infinite, impersonal love, wisdom, and supply of the universe become visible, tangible, active. You are the lens that focuses the sun's rays into a point of fire. The lens does not say, "I have given of my light," for it holds no light of its own. It merely allows the light to pass through it in a particular, useful way. Your individuality is that lens. Your consciousness is the clarity or the smudge upon it. Therefore, to give is to consciously clarify the lens. It is to remove the obstruction of the personal sense of I and mine. The act of giving, when performed from this recognition, is not an act of loss, but an act of alignment. It is the deliberate positioning of yourself as an open channel. You do not give as away. You give through. The love you express to a troubled friend is not a withdrawal from your personal emotional bank. It is you, for a moment, ceasing to block the infinite, divine love that is always seeking an outlet. You become the aperture. The wisdom you share in a conversation is not the last of your good ideas. It is you silencing the clamor of personal opinion and letting the intuitive, universal intelligence find voice through your experience. You become the trumpet. Consider a practical moment. You are exhausted at the end of a long day. Your personal reservoir of patience is bone dry. A family member needs your attention, your kindness. From the old view, you might dredge up a scrap of civility from somewhere, a spent resource, and you give it, all the while feeling your own emptiness grow. This is depletion. It breeds resentment. Now, from this new standpoint, you pause. You do not look within to your exhausted self for a resource. You look through that self to the infinite source of peace that is your true nature. You consciously relax the tight fist of your personal fatigue. You inwardly acknowledge, I am not this tired personality. I am the dwelling place of everlasting peace. Then you turn and listen. The kindness that flows then is not yours. It is not manufactured. It is allowed. It passes through you. And here is the mystery in that very act of being the conduit. You are filled. The fatigue that was the hallmark of a closed, personal sense of being is often washed away in the flow. You gave nothing of yourself, and you are renewed. You did not impart a piece of your limited stock. You imparted the atmosphere of the infinite, and in doing so, you dwelled within it. Or take the dollar given to the street musician. If you give it from your sense of my money, my hard-earned supply, you have participated in a small, sad story of scarcity. You have reinforced the borders of mine and fine. But if in that moment you see the hand extending the bill not as your personal hand, but as the very hand of divine circulation momentarily appearing as you, everything changes. You are not a separate entity bestowing a favor upon another. You are one point in the infinite circulatory system of divine substance recognizing itself at another point. The money is not yours. It is life's currency moving through you to express harmony, appreciation, and support. The act becomes a sacred ritual, a confirmation of one infinite source. And the feeling within you is not one of loss, but of power, of alignment, of rightness. You have not depleted a resource, you have celebrated and confirmed the presence of the resource everywhere. This is the impartation that does not deplete. You cannot exhaust the sun by letting its light pass through your window. You cannot impoverish the ocean by allowing a cup of its water to flow through your hands. When you know yourself not as the cup, but as the very shoreline where the ocean rises and falls, giving becomes as natural and as effortless as the tide coming in. You are not doing something to the universe. You are letting the universe do something through you. And in that permission, in that conscious alignment, you are not left waiting for a return. You are instantly immersed in the reality of the flow. The giving and the receiving are not two separate events. They are the same divine current. To be the place where it flows is to receive its touch, its sound, its life, in the very instant of its passing. You are not a donor hoping for a tax receipt from God. You are the living proof of an abundant, imparting universe, and your every act from this consciousness becomes a fresh revelation of that truth. This understanding brings us to the critical pivot point, the fulcrum upon which all of this turns from theory into lived reality. For if you are the transparency, the lens, the channel, then a profound and liberating shock of truth must be allowed to shatter a lifelong illusion. You are not the source. You have never been the source. All the anxiety, the pressure, the terrible weight of being the originator and sustainer of your own life. It is a burden you were never meant to carry because it is not true. Your entire sense of struggle is built upon the mirage of a separate self that must generate from within its own being all the love, intelligence, health, and supply it needs to survive. This is the agony of the human condition. You have mistaken the pipe for the reservoir. I want you to grasp this with every fiber of your being. You are the avenue. The infinite, divine consciousness, the one creative principle of the universe, call it what you will, is the source. It is the sole actor, the only presence and power. Its nature is to impart, to express, to unfold. It is a continuous outpouring, an eternal emanation of itself, and you, in your true identity, are not a bystander to this, You are a specific, individual form of its expression. You are a unique place where this infinite activity is happening. You are not a creator. You are a location of creation. You are not a giver. You are the giving itself taking place. The love you feel is not yours. It is the activity of divine love flowing as your capacity to feel and express. The intelligence that solves a problem is not your cleverness. It is the activity of the one divine mind, finding a solution through the faculties of your awareness. The strength that arises in a moment of crisis is not your personal fortitude. It is the activity of infinite life supporting its own manifestation. Think of your own breath. You do not own the air. You do not manufacture it in your lungs. The atmosphere is a vast, boundless ocean of life, giving substance. You are the avenue for that substance. You inhale, you receive. You exhale, you give. The giving and receiving are one continuous motion of a reality far greater than your physical form. You are the point of exchange. Now, expand that vision to everything you are and have. Your very awareness is the inhaling and exhaling of infinite consciousness. To believe you are the source is like the nostril believing it is the creator of the wind. It leads only to a sense of terrible responsibility and inevitable failure. Now, bring this down from the mountaintop to the dusty road of your daily life. You sit at your desk, faced with a task that seems beyond your capabilities. The old, crushing thought arrives. I have to figure this out. I have to generate a solution from my own knowledge. I have to be smart enough. Feel the weight of that. The contraction, the fear, the self-reliance that is really a form of loneliness. That is the avenue trying to be the source. It is the pipe believing it must create its own water. The activity from the standpoint of being the avenue is radically different. You pause. You consciously acknowledge the pressure, and then you consciously release it. You say within, I am not the source of wisdom. I am the place where the infinite intelligence of the universe becomes articulate and practical. I am the avenue for its clarity. Then you proceed. You look at the problem not with a frantic, generative mind, but with a quiet, receptive one. You open the books, you review the notes, you sit in the silence, and an idea comes. It flows. It may feel like your idea, but it arrives with an ease, a rightness, a coherence that feels given. You did not manufacture it. You allowed it to flow through the avenue of your educated, attentive mind. The solution was always present in the infinite field of consciousness. You simply became the point where it emerged into form. Or consider a moment of interpersonal conflict where you feel you must defend yourself to justify, to win. The sense of I is inflamed. You feel you must generate enough righteous anger, enough clever rebuttals from your own stockpile of personal will. This is the avenue at war. Believing its own survival depends on its own power. But what happens when, in a moment of grace, you remember? You remember you are the avenue for peace, not the source of defense. You relax the fierce grip on your personal position. You become quiet inside, and from that quiet, Words may come that are not your crafted argument, but words of unexpected truth that disarm the situation. A compassion you did not personally summon arises. You have stepped aside as the conflicted source and allowed the avenue of a higher harmony to operate. The conflict dissolves not because you won, but because you ceased being the source of it. This is the practice to catch yourself in the act of playing the source, to feel the weight, the anxiety, the strain of manufacturing what you think you need, and then to consciously relinquish that role, to affirm, I am not the source. I am the avenue. I am the place where the infinite expresses as me. You do this not to become passive, but to become supremely active with a power that is not your own. Your responsibility is not to generate the flow, but to keep the avenue clear, to remove the blocks of fear, personal sense, and limitation that you have erected. Your job is consent, not creation. When you know yourself as the avenue, giving becomes the most natural thing in the world. You are not handing out precious bits of your own dwindling treasure. You are simply refusing to stand in the way of the tide. You are letting life live itself as you, and in that letting, there is no depletion, only the endless surprise of discovering what wants to flow through you next. The natural and inevitable consequence of knowing yourself as the avenue and not the source is the complete collapse of the concept of deferred fulfillment. The entire world of commerce and human barter operates on a promise of future satisfaction. You labor now for a paycheck later. You invest now for a return later. You are polite now for favor later. This is the wheel of time, of expectation, and ultimately of anxiety. You have been taught to apply this same framework to this divine principle, waiting for the shall be given as a separate future event, a reward deposited after a spiritual transaction clears. This waiting is the proof that you have not yet touched the principle, for when you are the avenue, the fulfillment is not later. It is immediate in the very act. Let this sink in. The moment you are functioning as a clear and conscious channel, the activity itself is the totality of the experience. The giving and the receiving are one single motion. They are not two halves of a bargain, but two words describing the same flow from two different angles. To stand at the mouth of a spring and pour its water into a cup is not a loss followed by a gain. The pouring is the receiving, for you are in intimate contact with the cool, clear, endless flow. The satisfaction is in the participation with the source. The person receiving the cup of water experiences the gift as a separate event, but you, the pourer, if you are conscious, experience the wholeness of the spring. You are not waiting for the spring to pay you back. You are one with its nature in the act of outpouring. This is the secret that liberates you from the torment of spiritual bookkeeping. The "it shall be given" is not a commodity delivered to your doorstep tomorrow. It is the quality of consciousness you inhabit in the moment of selfless impartation. It is the joy, the freedom, the sense of rightness and power that floods you when you are not giving from yourself, but giving as the activity of the infinite. That feeling is the gift. That state of consciousness is the kingdom, and it is given to you in the very instant you forget yourself as a separate giver. Consider a smile. You walk down the street, burdened by your own thoughts. You catch the eye of a stranger, and for no reason other than a spontaneous impulse, you offer a genuine, warm smile. You do not do it to get a smile back. You do it because in that moment, a kindness moves through you, and in that very instant, before the other person even reacts, something happens within you. Your own burden lightens. Your own world brightens. A subtle joy flickers. That is the immediate fulfillment. The smile that may or may not return is irrelevant to the inner transformation that has already occurred. You aligned with the imparting nature of life, and life imparted to you the experience of its own likeness. You gave a smile, and you were instantly given the consciousness from which smiles arise. The outer form of the gift and the inner state are one. Now take a more challenging example. You are listening to someone share a deep grief. The old way would be to listen with a part of your attention, while another part scrambles to find the right words. The perfect comfort to give from your own store of wisdom. That is giving as a future event. You are waiting to deliver your verbal gift, and you are missing the present moment entirely. But from this new standpoint, you realize the greatest gift is not your words, but your presence. You consciously become the avenue for a healing silence, for an unconditional listening. You set aside your personal need to fix or solve. You simply become the space for their pain to be heard. And in that very act of becoming that clear, compassionate space, a profound peace settles over you. You are not drained by their sorrow. You are deepened by the sacredness of the shared moment. That peace, that depth, that sense of sacred connection, that is the shall be given. It is given right then. It is the intrinsic reward for functioning as an avenue of divine love. The other person may feel comforted later upon reflection, but you receive the comfort of grace in the now. Or you write a check to a cause you believe in. If you do it with a mental calculation, wondering what good it will do, or if you can really spare it, you are in the realm of future and loss. But if, in the moment you sign it, you have a conscious recognition. This is not my money. This is the substance of the universe circulating, and my hand is a momentary instrument of its flow. A tangible shift occurs. A feeling of expansion, of being part of something vast and benevolent, replaces the feeling of contraction. That expansive feeling is the treasure. It is the immediate deposit into your spiritual consciousness. The check will clear the bank in 3 days, but the kingdom of heaven was deposited in your awareness the moment the pen left the paper. This is why the sages speak of the present moment as the only reality. In the pure present, where you are not recalling a past loss or anticipating a future gain, you can experience the wholeness of the flow. You are not a beggar waiting outside the gates of fulfillment. You are standing in the center of the fountain. The water rising from the source and the water falling back to the pool are not separate events. They are the fountain. To give from the consciousness of being the avenue is to stand in that center. The giving is the cascade, and the cool, refreshing spray on your face is the it shall be given. They happen together. The action and the satisfaction are fused. You are no longer a laborer working for a distant wage. You are the artist, lost in the joy of the brushstroke, where the act of painting and the beauty being created are one and the same experience. Your life ceases to be a series of transactions and becomes a living communion where every true impartation is instantly its own perfect and complete reward. This leads us to the very core of the revelation. For when you begin to live from this place where the act itself is the fulfillment, you are no longer operating within the old world of measurable quantities. You have stepped out of the kingdom of scarcity and into a completely different dimension of being. This is not a philosophical concept. It is an experiential reality that begins to reshape your perception of yourself and your world. Every conscious act of giving as the avenue, where you are not the source but the transparency, becomes a radical declaration against limitation. It is, in fact, the only way you can ever come to know the truth of your own nature. You can think about infinitude forever, but you will never ever know it until you act from it. And giving from this consciousness is that very action. It does something to you. It peels back the veil and shows you, not in theory, but in lived experience, the infinite nature of your own being. What do you believe you are? A physical body with a mind, born at a point in time, accumulating experiences and resources until you deplete and die. That is the story of the separate self, the I that claims ownership. That I is finite, fragile, always measuring what comes in against what goes out. But when you, in a moment of clarity, give without that I being at the center, when you write the check as an instrument, when you listen as a space of compassion, when you smile as an impulse of unbidden joy, something extraordinary happens. The stranglehold of that small, separate I loosens. For a moment, it is not in charge. And in that pause, in that gap, you get a glimpse of what you are behind the persona. You experience yourself not as a container holding a limited amount of something, but as a boundless capacity for something. You touch the edges of your own infinitude. This is the great discovery. Your true being is not a stockpile of love. It is the capacity to experience and express love without end. It is not a reservoir of intelligence. It is an openness to an intelligence that has no boundaries. It is not a wallet of spiritual currency. It is the very fabric of substance itself. You are infinite capacity. The only thing that makes you feel finite is the activity of the personal sense of I, constantly drawing lines around everything, claiming this much is mine, and therefore not yours, measuring what is left. Giving from the old consciousness reinforces those lines. Giving from the new consciousness dissolves them, and in the dissolving, you catch your reflection in the mirror of the infinite. Let this become practical, tangible. You are faced with a day that is overscheduled, a to-do list that seems impossible. The finite self looks at the clock and the list and feels panic, pressure, a sense of being completely inadequate to the demand. It sees only its own limited minutes and limited energy. Now, in the midst of that storm, a request comes. Someone needs a moment of your time. The finite self groans internally, seeing this as the final straw, a drain on its precious, dwindling resources. But suppose you remember. Suppose you pause and make the inner adjustment. I am not these limited minutes. I am the capacity for the harmonious unfolding of activity. You turn to the person, and for 2 minutes, you are fully present. You give that attention as the avenue, and in that very act, something shifts internally. The frantic pressure of the clock often seems to quiet. A strange spaciousness enters your mind. You return to your list not with less time, but with a different consciousness. You are no longer a finite bag of minutes being emptied. You are a focal point for orderly activity. Ideas flow more clearly. Priorities realign effortlessly. You have, through that act of selfless attention, given yourself an experience of your own capacity beyond the limits of the clock. You didn't get more time. You touched the timeless within which time operates. Or consider forgiveness. The finite, personal I holds a grievance. It nurses a hurt, a sense of being wronged. That hurt is a possession, a bitter treasure in the vault of the separate self. To forgive, from that standpoint, feels like giving away that possession, losing your story, your justification. It feels like a diminishment. But forgiveness from the standpoint of infinite being is the opposite. It is the recognition that the story of grievance is a tiny, confining cell you have built for yourself. To release it is not to give something away. It is to break down the walls of the cell. In the moment, you consciously choose to drop the narrative of hurt. Not because the other person deserves it, but because you can no longer bear the confinement of it. You are not giving up a possession. You are claiming your freedom, the expansive relief, the lightness, the return of your own peace. That is the immediate revelation of your infinite nature. You thought you were giving up a piece of your justice, but you were actually discarding a shackle. The "it shall be given" is the experience of your own boundless self, which was always there, obscured by the clutter of personal history. This is the ultimate purpose of the principle. It is not a financial strategy. It is a spiritual drill, an exercise in self-revelation. Every time you give without the sense of a separate, sacrificing giver, you are performing an act of truth. You are asserting through your conduct, I am not that which can be lessened. I am that which expresses, and in expressing, knows itself more fully. You are using the circumstances of daily life, the shared moment, the shared resource, the shared kindness, to rub away the tarnish on the mirror of your soul until you can finally see staring back at you not a fragile, needy creature, but the very image and likeness of the imparting infinite one. The gift you give to the world, in the end, is the occasion for you to receive the greatest gift of all the undeniable knowledge of what you truly are. And so we arrive at the final living expression of this principle, the fruit that proves the tree is alive and rooted in reality. When you have touched the infinite nature of your being through these conscious acts, you will notice a subtle yet profound shift in the very fabric of your experience. The return, the "it shall be given," will cease to look like a repayment in kind, a dollar for a dollar, a favor for a favor. That is the currency of the marketplace, the language of separate entities keeping score. The return you will begin to witness is something far more significant, far more indicative of the truth at work. The gift circles back, but not as an object. It returns as an increased capacity to impart. The flow does not bring you more stuff to hoard, it widens the channel itself. You are not given more water to store in your private cistern. You are given a greater bore, a deeper connection to the aquifer, so that the life-giving flow can move through you with greater force, clarity, and blessing. This is the evidence that you are not dealing with a system of rewards, but with a law of consciousness. A closed, fearful consciousness is a narrow, constricted pipe. It may receive a trickle, and it can only give a dribble. Every act of giving from that consciousness keeps it narrow. But an open, selfless consciousness, knowing itself as the avenue, is a pipe being cleaned, widened, and polished by the very flow it allows to pass. The action of giving, when free from the personal sense, is like a solvent on the internal rust of limitation. It scours the walls of your awareness. And the result is not that you get more back into your hands. It is that you become capable of handling more, of being a more effective, more joyous, more powerful instrument for the divine activity. You are not enriched in your personal account. You are amplified in your function. Watch for this in the most ordinary moments. You listen patiently to a colleague's complaint, not to fix it, but simply to be the space for it. You give the gift of pure attention. The immediate return is the peace of that spacious consciousness, as we've seen. But later, perhaps that same day, you find yourself in a meeting. A complex problem arises, and there is a pressure to speak, to assert your opinion. But instead of the old anxiety, you find a deep, calm clarity within. You are able to listen to all sides without your own agenda chattering. And when you do speak, your words carry a weight and a wisdom that seems to come from beyond you. They cut to the heart of the matter. What is that? It is the increased capacity to impart wisdom. Your earlier act of selfless listening didn't earn you a brilliant idea. It polished the lens of your perception so that when the moment for insight came, the light could pass through you more directly, with less distortion from your personal fears and desires. The gift of attention returned as the capacity for clearer perception. Or consider a financial example stripped of all superstition. You feel an inner prompting to contribute to a cause, not from guilt or calculation, but from a genuine sense of being the instrument for good. You do so with a conscious release of any attachment to the money or to a specific outcome. The weeks that follow do not necessarily bring an unexpected check in the mail. That is the old, childish expectation. Instead, you may find yourself presented with a new idea, a fresh opportunity for service or creativity that you had not seen before. The idea excites you, feels aligned with your purpose, and has the potential to be of greater benefit than your original contribution. This new idea, this new vision, that is the increased capacity to impart. Your conscious release of the old form of substance cleared a mental and spiritual blockage, allowing a new and more powerful form of expression to flow into your awareness. You gave money, and you received vision. You gave from your visible supply, and you were given an increased capacity to generate supply. The form of the return is always higher, always pointing you back to your nature as the avenue, not the owner. This is the perpetual motion of the spiritual universe. You are not a static being accumulating spiritual wealth. You are a living process of expression. The purpose of the flow is not to fill you up, but to flow through you. Therefore, the only logical, the only possible return on a selfless act is to make you a better, clearer conduit. The love you express without condition returns as a deeper, more resilient ability to love. The truth you speak without fear of consequence returns as a sharper, more discerning access to truth. The strength you lend to another returns as a more unshakable fortitude in your own core. This finally silences the last whisper of the bargaining mind. You stop looking for a reciprocal object and start appreciating the growth of your own spiritual stature. You begin to see your life not as a series of trades, but as a school where every opportunity to give is, in fact, a training exercise to expand your capacity to be who you truly are. The musician who practices scales is not given back scales. They are given the increased capacity to play symphonies. The gift you give to the world is the practice, the increased capacity to impart, the greater love, wisdom, strength, and vision that then moves through you. That is the symphony. It is the only return that makes eternal sense, for it is the return that proves you are forever becoming more of what you have always been, the appointed place where the infinite chooses to give of itself endlessly